Welcome back to the Holistic Meets Education Unfiltered podcast. This is episode 5. We're going to be talking about reading energy in children. And today is a very special episode because we have our first guest host. So we're here with Jenn Clerkin. She's a dear friend of mine. She's going to be touching upon energy healing. She also makes beautiful crystal jewelry. She's going to be talking about that a little bit later. So I'm going to pass the mic to Jenn. If you can just introduce yourself, who you are, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Jenn Clerkin. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, sound conduct, Reiki master, and energy healer. And I couldn't be more excited to be here with Sara and Candace.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And we're so grateful that you're here with us today.
Yes.
We're going to open the podcast just talking about energy and what energy means to each of us, right? Because the three of us, we all come from different backgrounds and we sort of meet in the middle, but we all have different viewpoints. So I'll share what I kind of think about energy, and then I'll pass the mic to Candace and Jenn. So for me, energy is, it's sort of, right, I think of it as emotions in motion, right? It's sort of who we are at the very core, and it changes minute to minute, and anything can impact our energy. So any external experience that we have, things going on in our life, stress, and it just changes from moment to moment. That's sort of my perspective on that.
I love your perspective, Sara. When I think of energy, I really didn't know anything about energy until, of course, well, I kind of knew about it when I was younger because I would feel things, right? I would always kind of feel what family members were going through, or I always kind of felt situations, and it would, make me feel internally a different kind of way. But until I got older, I really started to understand energy more. It's something we can't see, right? However, it's something we can feel. And energy, we know in science, energy transfers. And so even as an adult, not understanding kind of who I was, being an empath, learning that later on, walking into a room and being able to explain or express to you exactly what the energy, right? Something we can't see, but we could feel what was going on in that room, and be able to tell you exactly kind of what was going on during that time, whether a person was sad, a person was angry, a person was happy, excited. Just like kind of Sara said, I agree with the energy. It's something with emotions, and it affects you, and it's something you can feel, and it definitely can shift and it can change depending on, your energy. So yeah, that's what I think about energy.
I feel like I have, growing up, a similar feel to it. I feel like it's the, when you were a kid and they would blow up a balloon and then they'd have you rub your hair in it, and then you'd kind of walk away from it, like pull away, and your hair would be like sticking to the balloon to show you that, there is live energy that goes from, you're the conduct with the balloon, right? And the energy and the electricity are between you, right? So it makes it, kind of the hair stick to the balloon, and, that's everything, right? We're all energy, frequency, and vibration. Everything we do is that. So you walk into a room and someone's going to be there that you don't necessarily get along with, and you go into that room, and that expression of I can cut the air with a knife, because you feel their energy and you feel the uncomfortable feeling, but it's not necessarily like something you're doing or something they're doing, but your energy exchange is, as people are magnetic, there's also repellence, right? So, your energy repels each other. So you physically feel that, but we're never taught in school how to feel that. Like, we're never taught, like, if you're when I was a kid, we would call it, my friend refers to it like this. I call it butterflies in the stomach. She would call it belly bells. So those feelings of like something's wrong, that's energy. You're feeling someone's energy, or you're having that gut and, instinct feeling. And it's something that should be taught in school. As far as I'm concerned, you should know that when something doesn't feel right, this is actual energy. This is vibration. This is frequency that you're feeling. People ride on certain frequencies. So there's certain people energetically that you are going to be so magnetic to, and they're going to feel like your people, and you're going to be like, these are the people I want to spend the rest of my life with. We just get it. And then there's people that you wish them well and you don't want anything bad for them, but you're like, please don't make me hang out with that person again, or don't. They're not my people. They're not, they're not the people that feel good to me. And that is all energetic, because it's not through words that you feel that. It's as soon as the person walks in the room. So I think it's the same for children when you go to school, right? You have you start out in nursery or some kind of toddler time, and there's the children that magnetically cling to each other. And then there's the children that probably wouldn't even, there'll be two kids, say the class is 15 people, and you were like, oh, remember Tommy was in your class, and the other kid would be like, there was a Tommy, because they never even spoke to each other, because they didn't have that magnetism to sit there and play. For me, having a 10-year-old, we teach him to be kind to everybody, we've had a lot of discussions in 2022 that my parents didn't have to have with me in 1975, right? Life is different. And we always teach kindness, kindness, and everything different is beautiful, so, but you will still, even teaching that, you will still have people drawn to magnetism. So it's not really, we base as humans so much of aesthetically, like what a person is outside and what a person looks like, or what a person's wearing, or who they are. But the truth is, personally, I could care less what you are, who you are, what you're doing. I care that you're kind and you're good, and what energy you're giving to me. If you're giving me good energy, I have the utmost respect for you, and we're going to get along just fine. I don't base it on what you're wearing, how much makeup you have on, what you're doing, what you do in life, where you're at in life. That doesn't matter to me. It's what's inside. It's your heart. It's your heart. To me, it's heart energy, and that's what I try to teach my son, when he goes to school, is be kind in your heart. But it's okay when things don't feel good. Don't feel forced into anything, because someone tries to lead you, again, like kind of magnetism directing you, that energy, because they're feeling something. You don't have to feel that. It's okay to speak up, and make sure when you're doing that, you're kind, because energy exchange is important. So it's important that you feel good in who you are in order to be kind to others. Because listen, if we go somewhere and we don't feel good in who we are, right, then that's kind of when you get that those kids, like kind of the bullying and stuff like that starts at home. If you're not teaching someone like kindness, and when I say kindness, I mean energy, like energy kindness, like to be tolerant of something even if you don't understand something, to be kind to something even if it's not what you want to do, but you still have to be kind, because that's what your frequency is. That's vibration. That's we have different frequencies, right? So if we're in a high frequency and we're welcoming, and we don't need to understand. I don't understand everything. I was born in the 70s. Like I'm learning things from my friends' kids that are like teens now, that I don't understand everything that's going on, because it's not the same world I lived in, but I'm okay with that, because I love to learn. I want to know all about it. I want to always respect everything about it, but that keeps me at a high frequency, because I'm willing to stay at a high frequency to be kind and learn and be, I think tolerant, I don't love the word tolerant, because I think tolerant means you just standing for it, but I feel like kindness is a better word to that, or be compassionate to everything that goes on. And I teach my child the same thing when he walks into a situation. Not every kid is going to be your jam, right? Like they're not, and that's okay. And it's okay to not play with someone if it doesn't feel good, if their energy doesn't feel good to you, but we still need to walk away with dignity and kindness. We don't need to lowering yourself to that vibration of being the first step of getting angry and being mean automatically lowers your frequency and vibration. Like you're automatically lowering yourself to a place. So I get those feelings. You should honor those feelings. I work with people day in and day out that have traumatic fear-based anger feelings. So I want always, I'm not a toxic positivity kind of person that you only live in the good, but you can have those feelings, but those feelings are yours. So they're not necessarily needing to be put on someone else, even if the person's making you feel that way, because it's mirrored. Energy is mirrored, right? So Sara and I have the same mentor. So we were always taught this, that everything is a mirror of the other person. And that's what it is. That mirror is energy, right? So the other person treating you bad is a mirror of them. But the reason you're feeling it is because it's a trigger of you. So it's something you're going through. So I see my son get angry and I honor him getting upset about things. He's allowed to do that, but it doesn't really serve him. So I try to teach him, like, it's okay if someone's not making you feel good, then you can get, if you're, they do a lot of computer stuff, a lot of gaming and stuff. Like if someone's not treating you good, it's okay to hang up and say, this doesn't feel good to me now. I'm going to leave. I was like, you don't have to stay. I don't want you to stay in a situation that doesn't feel good, but it also doesn't honor your energy if you get angry about it. It's just okay to leave. Feel your feels, but then move on from it. Just don't stay in the situation. Because when we stay in situations that don't feel good, is when we start to get those really negative feelings. And that's the same for school. We don't talk about any of this in school. Teachers don't honor it in school, not on purpose. We're just not taught it. There's no class teaching you, like, recognize a kid's energy when you see a kid become angry, instead of like putting him in a corner and making him feel worse, or doing something like, here, Tommy, I don't know why I'm using the name Tommy today, but it's a good name. Here, Tommy, go in a timeout to a corner. And instead of like going up and like maybe sitting down with the kid and be like, what happened this morning before you left the house? Why did you come to, we just started school and you've already come with this. Is there something I can help you with? When I was a kid, I felt like teachers really, a lot of them, I have a lot of memories of some really good teachers in my life that really gave a shit. They cared. They really, really cared. I have not had that experience with my son. And it really disheartens me. I haven't had that experience with my son. There was a set of teachers when we were in New York that were incredible, and I will honor and love them always, because I feel like they really took into consideration when kids have, my son always had difficulty learning the way another kid would learn and doing it. He's very smart, but he learns differently. And they really honored the way he learned. And I remember another teacher only caring about how my son held his pencil. And she called us in to school and she kept on telling him pinch, what I guess this means, because he was holding it. He had PT and OT and all these things. And finally, one day, my son got aggravated and threw the pencil on the floor. I think he was in kindergarten or first grade. I think first grade. He threw the pencil on the floor and he's like, enough. Like, he just told her, and she called us up to school. He didn't do anything else. She's like, he was so angry. I'm like, because your repetitive behavior every day has been telling him pinchies. He obviously has difficulty holding it that way. So I went to his OT at the time and I said, I care that my kid writes neatly and is getting the education he deserves. And he's not, because all he's coming home and telling us is that this teacher is telling him to hold the pencil. Like, literally, it was embedded in his subconscious that he had to hold this pencil like this. Like, he had to hold it the right way, but he was holding it like with 3 fingers and he wasn't holding it correctly. And the OT was like, you're right. It's not as important. It's important that he properly learns to do it for his muscle tone. But the fact that this is the only thing that this teacher is caring about, and it's now embedded, repetition embeds something in your subconscious. That's it. Once it gets a repeated pattern. So my kid was so conscious of the way he was holding his pencil that it like ruled his life. And meanwhile, my kid had the neatest handwriting. It was totally legible in first grade, like legible. Like, you would be like, I can't believe this kid is in first grade. How neat he wrote. So why do we really base it on that? Because curriculum wise, somewhere someone said you have to hold it this way.
Right.
My kids My kid's 10, he still holds his pencil wrong and he writes neat. He does great in school. Whatever.
And the rules, right, that we're expected for children to follow, right? Not allowing them to be their authentic selves, and really understanding, like you said with your son, he learns differently, right? And tapping into that to who he is. And just like you said, not being repetitive with things, constantly saying the same thing to give a child a complex, but holding that space for them to feel like they can be who they are, you know, and be able to express themselves in the right way. And then when you talked about the energy part with children, and with your son, I think that's a amazing thing, because unfortunately a lot of educators don't understand energy. They don't understand vibrations or frequency or anything like that. Everything is expected to just follow, like you said, the rules of what the education system has set for these students to come to school, sit down, do your work, pay attention, be quiet. You know, it's no tapping into how their energy field is or how they truly are feeling. And I love what you said about kindness, because it's so funny. I teach my children, I have 2 boys, and I teach them that as well. You know, you operate in compassion, you know, you operate and treat others kindly. And it is important to not force children. So I don't know how you feel about this, Jenn and Sara, but as far as to feel like children should be forced to make friends or forced to apologize or forced to do certain things, if it doesn't feel right, you know, within them to do these things, should they be forced to do it?
You know, with my son, it depends. If I know he's in the wrong, like if I hear him, like I said, he games a lot because we went from New York to South Carolina. So we moved like 6 months before COVID. Then we moved to another place in South Carolina during COVID. So he has a few friends here, but he doesn't have a ton of friends here. So he plays with the same few kids. And sometimes my son isn't nice. Sometimes they are not nice. You know, it goes back and forth. If I see him in the wrong, I do expect an apology from him, but on his terms, you know, like I talk to him and I say, how would you like to be treated like that? You know, like you've come out crying when people have treated you like that. That doesn't feel good to you. So, you know, so we let him do it on his own. We don't sit there and, you know, have a like over him and they're like, all right, let me hear you do it. But I do expect a certain respect because I expect a certain respect as a parent. So I think when you can't expect, life is very different now. Like I said, it is, right? Kids are growing up differently. They're learning different stuff. They're learning stuff younger, but you can't expect a parent. I just had this talk with one of my clients. You can't expect a kid to respect you if you don't respect what they're going through, even if you don't understand it, right? So you can't expect the kid to treat you well if you don't respect. So we work a lot on respect here. So I do expect an apology if my kid is in the wrong. If someone else did something wrong, then no, I don't expect I don't have to hug it out or do anything because that kid apologized. And if the kid doesn't, I'm okay with my son walking away from a situation. That's fine. I used to, when he was younger, I'd be like, oh, give a hug or do stuff like that. I've laid off of doing that because I see energetically, sometimes he does not want to do that with certain people. So I have learned to kind of lay off on that, but that was kind of probably embedded in me. It was kind of a subconscious behavior that I was taught, like, oh, give your cousin a hug or do something. So I don't really force that anymore because I realized that might not feel good to him now that he's old, he's 10 years old now. So but I was guilty of that, guilty of kind of making an energy exchange for him that might not have felt so good. But as the years progress of me doing this work, now I'm like, okay, maybe he doesn't want to give that energy because that's an energy exchange. Actually physically touching someone is an energy exchange. So now I don't do that anymore. But yeah, I was super guilty of that for a long time, being like, yeah, go give a hug or give a kiss. But now he will do it sometimes, but I kind of recognize when he's like, no, that doesn't feel good to me, I encourage my kids to speak truth, even when it doesn't feel good to the other person, as far as like family members and stuff like that. They don't always like it, but I do encourage truth because it is his truth. And we hold, things come, like I said, like, we have a new room on Facebook, and Sara, you're in the room, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about like subconscious and conscious behaviors, and 95% of our brain is subconscious. So it's like that initial action of, someone doing something to you. And then if you don't get out your truth, if you don't speak what's going on energetically, it sits in your portals, your earthly portals, your 7 chakras. It sits inside of you, different places. For me, it's always an upset stomach. Like if I get anxiety or I do anything, I get an upset stomach. For my son, he'll get like a headache. He'll get, if he gets aggravated, he gets a headache. So he holds it in his head. So I don't really force him to hold back anymore. And sometimes that doesn't feel good to other people, but I feel like he has to speak his truth because I don't want it sitting in his energy. I don't want it sitting in his body. So and he does, he holds on to things, and I know that. So he'll repeat it. He has a repetitive pattern. Like when something happens, he needs to ask like 5, which is a normal childhood. You have 2 boys, you the 500, they're going to ask you the same thing 500 times. And you're like, all right, this is 501, it's enough. But they ask you the same thing over and over. But I know for him, if he doesn't get out exactly how he feels, it sits in his body. And he's a really healthy kid. He doesn't really get sick. He, as a kid, of course he did, because we build up immune systems. But I really feel like we take a lot of healthy supplements and do stuff. But I also think it's because we let him work through stuff. When he has a crying fit, we sit down and do 4, 7, 8 breaths, which is you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 7, you breathe out for 8. It's what I use with my clients. And it's also what I use with him. Like when I see him really upset, or if we get him upset, because we do get mad at him sometimes, we're normal parents and we get upset. But I always make sure to kind of give my energy exchange of how loved he is, and give a hug and tell him, let's breathe. And, you need to respect us just like we respect you. And we have that healthy energy exchange. But our life, even being, an energetic conductor and healer, I still go through the same thing everybody else. I'm human. You know what I mean? I get mad, I get upset. So does my child. But it's most important to me is not the energy exchange between my husband, my son, and I, because we have a pretty good hold on that. Like, even if we do get upset at each other, like talking it out and making sure that we do not hold on to that at all. And we have a pretty healthy relationship. But my exchange with my son is more his classroom exchange, because that's where I feel like after I was telling Sara before we got on here, he got a warning because he basically learned definitions and wrote the definitions out instead of rewording it. And then he got in trouble for honor code last week. He gets homeschooled. So we had no idea that he wasn't allowed to do that he wasn't allowed to write the definitions how they were. So she didn't even give him a forewarning. She didn't write to him and say, oh, you have to write this into your own words. She just gave him like basically what I would call, I went to Catholic school, a demerit for honor code. So I wrote to her and I was like, you realize that you're speaking this email. It was an extensive email, which was a page full of paragraphs saying that he had to call her. She would teach him. I said, my son is not calling you. He's not calling you. My 10-year-old is not calling you. You're not getting a phone call from him. Just let you know that. Like he's not, you can speak to me, anything you have said. He is 10 years old. I said, and you really should think about the harsh language you were using when you were speaking to a child. This is not a high school kid. You're speaking to a 10-year-old. I said, now he thinks he did something illegal and wrong. My son did not let this go for like 3 days because it was so in his energy. It was so embedded in there. And I was like, and my husband and I were like, you were not wrong. You had no idea you were doing anything wrong. So please let it go. But it's not easy. We can say that. But our kids are sponges much more than we are, because we can, as you get older, you learn to blow things off. When you're a child, you blow nothing off. You are a sponge. You're a little sponge. And it's heartbreaking to watch that he still does not want to deal. Now it's, I guess, like a week and a half, 2 weeks later, or whatever it was that I think it was like a week and a half ago. Like he doesn't want to have anything to do with that teacher now. Like he doesn't want to have an email. Like because he's upset, he's embarrassed, right? I think kids get embarrassed. Like he was embarrassed because he felt like he did something wrong. And we were like, you didn't know any different. So you didn't do anything wrong. Please let go of it. But they don't, they hold on to it. And that breaks my heart that the teacher wrote back and she said, I'm sorry if it came off harsh, but if he wants, again, call me. I'm like, my kid, I called the principal of the school. I was like, listen to me. My kid is not calling this teacher. So if you want to talk to her, like he will redo the work. He's glad to redo all the work the proper way, which he did the same day. But it's still there. Every time he signs on to school, he got 100 on the work. He redid it. It says warning, that he got a warning. So this is sitting on, how does that feel to a kid?
Absolutely. Like, I thank you for saying, Jen, and being transparent and talking about that situation with your son, because you think about how many parents have children that come home, and if they're not reading their energy right, or they're not in tune with how they're feeling, they miss so many things. And then you have a teacher who may be, expressing themselves in this hostile manner, or, their verbiage, that energy that they're giving the child is in frustration, it's in stress, it's in anger. So you imagine how many students are taking in that energy every single day, and they might even be acting out, based on that energy. And what you said is hurtful. Children take in what they hear, and as humans, we all do. Words do have an effect on us if we let it, right? But children, that executive function, the way the brain works, emotional wise, they cannot, like you said, kind of, let things go like we can. However, I feel like with children, you hold on to that in that subconscious, and then you start to believe that. That's the scary part, right?
Yeah.
Someone telling you something, and then as a child, you begin to believe that is what is true, and it's not. So kudos to you and your husband, for recognizing that and kind of changing that narrative for him, so he doesn't take that with him, into the future. But the issue in the school system now, how many children have started in kindergarten taking on these things, and each year, right, they're believing this about themselves. I mean, who is there to really stop that and shift that perspective? And this is why I love the fact that you are an energy healer, reader for children. I mean, it's needed. It's so needed. It is. So thank you.
No, you're so welcome. And I really love what I do. But I think it's more important. I think it's really most important for it to like be placed in school, like some kind of, like maybe guidance counselors need to take some kind of energetic class that to work with people and be like, what's sitting in you that when we go through, Sarah's done sessions with me, so she could tell you, I mean, obviously I'm not divulging any of Sarah's information, but she can tell you when you do a session and when you get those, we have so much sitting in our subconscious that when things come up for you, you're just like, holy cow, am I really having something come up from 5 years old? Like that I would not, but that's when you do it, right? When you're a kid. And when I work with a ton of clients, I can tell you probably one out of the three, I do 3 memories at a time because it is a very traumatic experience to bring these things up and clear them. So at least one of the 3 experiences will always be I would say 98% of my clients will be a childhood experience that has been sitting in them. And they'll be like, well, I don't understand why this is coming up. It doesn't seem significant now because I'm an adult. I'm like, but don't you get it? How significant that was to a child. I was like, that's the point of it. I was like, you didn't think it was significant, but you've been holding on to it for 40 years. And it's not even let you be who you wanted to be in life, because that was the first time that you felt bad. So it doesn't matter that, yes, today, maybe at 40, I'm 46, at 46, this little memory wouldn't have seemed significant, but when you're a kid, it's everything. You're like, this is everything. Someone doesn't love me. They don't feel needed, or their friends don't want to play with them. Like now you'd be like, all right, whatever, I have enough friends, or I'm fine being home by myself. Like you might feel totally different, but as a kid, that just soaks up into their energy, right into their subconscious. And it's where they go from there that everything kind of twists and turns. And yeah, energy, frequency, and vibration is something that definitely should be taught, because vibrational alignment, like being aligned and realizing that everything can be healed, like you should have to go to guidance. The thing is too, we have my son in guidance because we think it's important for him, because he's a very sensitive soul. So we have that for him. And that was something my husband and I wanted for him. But why does every kid not have guidance? Right? Because what do you have guidance for? Just usually for your high school curriculum, right? When you're going in for your high school curriculum, or you're going to pick colleges. So then you go and meet with the guidance counselor, right? But otherwise, like, why is there not a period once every few weeks, like maybe once a month, that every kid in that school meets with a guidance counselor to say, hey, are you okay?
Yeah, I agree. And that's a deep thing when I think about having a guidance counselor, right, in the schools at such a, at the elementary level, because working in the school system, I know the resources were not there. It's a heavy thing when it comes to that, right? And it's still a stigma when it comes to that. A lot of people still, don't buy in to that, the mental health and understanding that it is important. Children have emotions just like adults. Children go through traumatic things just like adults. Like you said, a lot of trauma starts as a child. And so I agree with you 1000% about a child having that guidance at that level. It's just unfortunate, with how the education system is. That's why I'm done, honestly, with how the education system is going.
Well, he's homeschooled this year, and we still have guidance for him. When we did it, we homeschooled him. We pulled him out with the whole situation of, like the fearing. I didn't agree with the fear in schools. That didn't feel okay to me. And that's just my person, my person, who I am. I respect every decision of everybody. But fear wasn't working for me. He had been in school 3 weeks last year. There's no mask mandates in South Carolina. There hasn't been for a really long time. And the teacher started telling them that how much the numbers will go. These are 10-year-old kids, how much the numbers are going up. So all of a sudden my son's walking out of school in a mask. And again, I respect everybody and everybody's decision. This has nothing to do with feeling differently for someone else. This is just us personally. So my husband was like, why are you wearing a mask? And he wouldn't answer him. So like he's like, listen, he's like, today's computer day, because we only give him computer he's only allowed to game on the weekends. He's like, if you want to use the computer today, I need to know why. Because usually he's pretty forthcoming. He's a little more forthcoming with me, but he's pretty forthcoming with both of us. So he's like, I need to know why I need to know what changed in a week. Like, you were going to school and for 3 weeks not wearing a mask. He's like, well, the teacher is telling us that it's really dangerous and the COVID numbers are going up. And this is all. And listen, my son is very educated on COVID. We've lost some good people in New York from it. We were not lacking telling him, but the fact was that at the time, I think it was 700 children in the whole United States had died of COVID. That's fact. That was a fact. That was statistically a fact, that it was not affecting my son's age like it was for people that were my age or older. So we were not putting him in a state of fear because of something that wasn't really needed to be feared for his age, but he was well aware of, what he needed to do. So we actually pulled him out of school because of that, because there was no mask mandates, but now the teacher was forcing this particular class to wear masks out of fear. And that was not okay with me. So we pulled him out of school. And when my son talks to his friends from New York, he's like, I know COVID is here. He's like, but I just don't have that fear behind it. And why should he? Why should he have been feared? I mean, does that make it better? Fear makes you sick. Fear makes you physically ill. My husband got into a terrible accident. I don't want to go into the accident. Got in a terrible accident 7 years ago. After that, I developed an autoimmune disease out of stress, because I was stressed for him. I was stressed for my family. Every dynamic was changed. I made myself physically sick. I did not have any signs of an autoimmune disease before he got into this accident. You make yourself physically sick, so I'm going to make my son physically sick. I'm going to make him energetically feel like something is wrong with him because someone wants to put that fear. I will not do it. I won't do it. So I physically pulled him out. We asked him, and again, we treat him very much like an adult with things. We sat him down and we said, do you want to go to school wearing a mask? Because that's obvious now that you don't feel comfortable not. So, or do you want to be homeschooled? And he said, I prefer to be homeschooled. So he wanted to stand up for himself, but he did not feel comfortable doing that because he had that fear of the respect of a teacher to student, right? He's not going to stand up for himself because of his age. But at the same time, we had to kind of step in and be like, okay, you have an option now. You don't have to stay there if you don't want. He is going back to school in August. He got into an audition-based school for piano. He's going back to school in August. He's amazing. He does great things. So he's starting school again in August. But we needed to let that listen. And I hold space for that teacher that needed to go through that. I'm okay that she was in fear and that she needed to go through that. That's her timeline. That's her life. That's what she needed to go through. But I don't appreciate it being put on the other kids, the other 30 kids that were in that class. That's it. Like you do what you do. I'm good with that. Whatever makes you feel good, you need to do, but you need to not. That's where energy exchange comes in. You need to do what feels best for you because that's going to make your energy feel best. But you also need to know, you need to not put that on other people because that's where energy exchange comes. You have to respect other people's decisions too. And if you need to like kind of distance yourself for a while because you can't get with what they feel, that's fine. Then distance yourself for a while if that feels good for you. It's okay to walk away from someone. You could say it respectively. You could be like, I totally respect your decision, but that's not my decision. So I have to kind of walk away from this because it doesn't feel good to me. I've had many of this, and Sara knows, in different situations, not to do at school with everything that's happened, that I had family members that wouldn't see me and do stuff because of decisions we were making. And I have the utmost respect for that because it was verbally discussed and said, this is how I feel. And I would say, this is how I feel. And we had a mutual respect for each other. We felt differently, but the love was there. There was no lack of love. There was no lack of, wishing well energy exchange. It was just that, but we spoke it. We didn't hold it in our energy. We didn't hold animosity. Animosity is strong energy exchange. Having that, we didn't hold that. We just spoke our truth. Like, this feels good to me. This feels good to me. So we're not going to see each other for a while, because that's what's going to feel best for both of us. And that's fine.
I think too, in the education system, the other problem is that even like the staff and the admin outside of the children, they don't even honor what's, best for their energy. And I think that winds up trickling down to the children, like indirectly, right? Because a lot of staff are, even pre-pandemic and pre-COVID, they wind up having to, honor the curriculum that they're forced upon, teaching and doing all these different things that they probably necessarily don't want to, adhere to, but they don't necessarily speak out against it really, right? Or even, try to change or like do something else. And I think that's something that children pick up on, right, from the staff. And I know for me, like when I was a kid, I was also considered like a sensitive child growing up, and I was definitely aware, even more so than the average child, of what was going on in my surroundings. And even if I was in an interaction with somebody, they didn't even have to say anything, and I would sort of feel that something was off or something was not in tune. And I think for those children, specifically like sensitive children in schools, it's even more challenging during this time with the pandemic. I know there's a few kids actually that I'm tutoring at the moment. They're also going through something similar that kind of Jenn touched upon, where they had this dynamic where they had to they chose to pull their kid out of the school system because they were just completely fear mongering the poor child. And, you know, it's sad because a lot of the time it's not even by choice. They're sometimes, I think a lot of the educators themselves are not even aware of what they're doing. It's become like a subconscious pattern at this point where
Well, you live in New York, Sarah. So
Yeah.
talk about New York being how it was. That's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
Because living in South Carolina, are you in New York as well, Candace?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay, so I don't know how it was in Ohio, but for us, our governor was like, this is serious, you know, these are the steps you need to take. But with everything, it was very left up to us. You know what I mean? Like us as the people. Sarah, for you, like that looked like a totally different, like,
What's that?
yeah, no, for us, so New York, in New York, it was very difficult, especially for individuals that really don't know what their truth is. So there's a lot of people that prior to the pandemic really bought into the ideas of somebody else. So whether it be like the government or just, you know, family members or friends, they really didn't have or know what was true to themselves. And once COVID hit in New York, we were presented with so much fear throughout, you know, our government on the news nonstop, trying to scare people, you know, it kind of dramatizing the whole event that went on. And people really, a lot of people felt they believed that to be true because that was all that was being presented. There really wasn't two sides. It was just, you know, this is the situation. This is what's going to happen if you don't do it. The kids have to be, you know, masked and jabbed and all of the things in school. Otherwise, they can't do this other. So it was the ideas presented was essentially you comply or you can't participate. And I think as humans in general, we thrive in community and we have this desire to fit in, right? So when this idea of, you know, well, you can't do this if you don't wear a mask, or you can't do this if you don't get the shot, that's triggering for a lot of people, because, you know, we want to fit in. So I think in the school systems, especially in New York, you know, there are kids with different, you know, disabilities, you know, that have particular needs, you know, and having to wear a mask in school for 8 hours a day is just not feasible for any child, let alone someone that, you know, is not necessarily very mobile, have issues with, you know, breathing on their own, like all of these things, like, and these kids still had to come double masked, triple masked at one point. Like it was just ridiculous. And
you know what, to each their own. If it felt good to you to do that, like I still see people wearing it. We haven't had mask mandates here. I want to be like in a year and a half. Like we haven't had it in a really long time. We were only officially closed for a few weeks and then it was 50% open. Like we didn't have anything happen like what was happening in New York. And when I would have people come visit here, they were like, wow, this is like really a different world and you're all functioning. And you know, that, you know, it's, listen, I don't think any of us are taking away from the seriousness of, you know what I mean, of a virus that was extremely serious and, you know what I mean? And it was debilitating to people and people passed from it. You know, I'm not taking away from that point of it, but when did we lose the fact that we still as humans are able to make our own decisions? That's just fact, you know, like, and we should be able to make them in our households, whichever feels good to us individually. And then if our friend's decision is different than ours, we should have respect for the fact that that person next to us is making a different decision, but we get it. I made certain decisions that I feel really good about, you know, and my husband made decisions that he feels good about, and my son made decisions that he feels good about. You know, we've had many talks, which, you know, my son will come and ask, like, why didn't we do this? Or why didn't we, you know, and we explained to him like, you know, this is what we chose to do, but this is why other people, well, why did someone else do this? Because that's what they chose to do as a family. And we have respect no matter what someone chooses to do. So we don't all need to look at, we have this kind of thing that everybody needs to fit in this like perfect little box, right? And like you were saying, like as a society, we all want to fit in, right? Because who doesn't want to, you want to have friends, you want to have fit in, and that's where kids come in, right? Because that's when you're learning to fit in and you're learning to, you're learning to kind of mold yourself and be your own person. With the world being so different, even besides the pandemic, like, listen, everything's different. There's more openness now, right? With everything, and there's more stuff going on. I always tell my son, I always explain to him with music. So my son we like rock music. So my son likes rock music. His favorite band is Kiss, right? So I tell him, I say to him, Trevor, when you go to school next year, I said, you're going to meet a lot of different people, a lot of different, you know what I mean? Different pronouns, different people. You're going to go through a lot of stuff. You're going to respect it. You're going to learn it. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You know what I mean? You'll correct your mistake and we respect everybody. I was like, so I use the example as music to him. I said, you're going to go to school next year and you're going to wear a Kiss shirt. And most of those kids are going to be like, what's that? Who's that? They're not going to know who that is. I said, but that's not a reason for you to change because someone else doesn't understand that. I said that you are who you are, and then everybody else is who they are. So they should be good in themselves, and you should respect who they are and where they feel good. And you should, to me, it's the easiest way to explain to a 10-year-old the differences in everybody. So I explained to him through music that this is who you are, and you really love rock music. And he's like, yeah, he does. He's like, and I was like, well, if someone made fun of you for that or did something, would you want to stop listening to it? And he's like, no. So I'm like, well, we would never make fun of someone else or make someone else feel bad for who they are because they have a right to be who they are. I was like, but you also don't have to make someone else like rock music because you do. If someone wants to like it, they'll like it. If they don't, they don't. We just, we are good in who we are, and we love everybody. We love everybody and we respect everybody. So I try to teach it to him that way. I think it's the easiest for his age to understand everything, and I think he probably gets, the truth is kids get it better than us. Kids don't really give a shit. We give a shit, right? They don't really give a shit.
They really don't.
They really don't.
At all.
They love everybody. They start off with love for everybody, and then it gets screwed up along the way when adults get involved.
It's true. We kind of think about that as children. They're very innocent. They're very loving. They don't see anything except what I want to play with this person. I want to talk to this person. They don't look at anything else. If they do get into a disagreement, what do? They forgive very easily.
Yeah.
They really do. And as adults, that is very challenging for some.
We're so bullheaded. And I do feel, I try to see, since doing the energy work for a while, I do try to see things from other people's perspective. Like I get it, like I said, I get angry and annoyed, but I do try to see where someone else is coming from now, where I would tell you 8 years ago, I wouldn't have. Like 8 years ago, I would have just been like, F you, I'm done. Like where now I will say, you know what? I'm not going through what that person's going through. This is a rough time. This is really, I'm not in it with them. So I have to respect where they're at, and that took me a long time to, I was very good at holding on to stuff for many years, like really holding on tight to my story, holding on tight to my victimhood, before I started doing this. So we really try to teach our kid to not do that. Like, you're not a victim, because you're not listen, we make our own stories, right? Like we could very easily, everybody in this world could be a victim. If you choose to be, you can be in that sad story. If you choose to be, it's up to you what you make of your story. It's up to you. So we don't want him doing that. We're like, you could be anything you want to be. I mean, listen, my kid he's 4'6". I don't want to say this loud because he can hear me, but he loves basketball. What should I do? Tell him he can't do it? I'm not going to tell him that. I'm going to let him play. You know what I mean? He's little, but He can do anything he wants to do. He'll, I'm not going to let him do it, let him figure out where maybe the height would be a disadvantage. You know what I mean? Like, then maybe he's got to figure out what it is. He loves sports. He loves basketball. He loves football. He loves, he's got to figure out how to work it. I'm not going to take that from him but growing up, how I learned in that very like construct of the cup is half empty, and you're not eat all your food on the plate, someone's starving somewhere else, because that's how you grew up in the 70s and 80s. If I would teach him with that mentality, then I would be like, no, you can't do. We don't tell him any of that. We're like, you want to be a musician for a living, be a musician. You want to do this for a living, do this. Like, who am I to tell you can't do that? I would be putting him in a victimhood mentality. I would be telling him he can't. He has to struggle at 10. He doesn't have to struggle. He was watching a YouTube video yesterday. I don't know if you guys see from dealing with kids, like he was watching a YouTube video yesterday, and the challenge was like a crying challenge, and he was like, I think he came into me and said like, I'm emotionally distraught or something, and I was like, Trevor, do you really think life is hard? Like, I want to, like, let's talk about this. Like, I was like, is your life tough? Tell me about it a little bit. He's like, no, my parents love me. And, I said, do you feel like you have a good life? He's like, yeah, I feel like I have a really good life. I was like, so do you think, and then I told him what emotionally distraught meant. And I was like, do you really feel like you had, then he said, I had an emotional breakdown. And I'm like, do you really think these are the appropriate things that you should be watching? Right. I said, do you understand why we don't want you watching these things? Because it's not appropriate for your age. Because what is a crying challenge? Like, you shouldn't want to. Crying is very serious. It's a great emotional release. When I feel really sad, I like to do it because it releases your energy in your body. So I'm all for crying. But do I think you should make yourself cry? No. I don't think this is healthy. I was like, it's not healthy. I said, Trevor, you love sports. There's plenty of sports on YouTube. I don't want to take YouTube away from you, but I do want you to understand that not everything on there is okay to watch. Like, I remember him being younger and watching these families, and they'd be on like top of couches and counters and like jumping off, like a 3-year-old jumping off. And I'm like, oh, you cannot watch this anymore. You really have to regulate. I do think as a parent, you do really need to regulate what your kid is. You need to do a check-in. I don't want to be on top of him. He's 10 years old. He needs his privacy. He needs to feel like he can develop in who he is, but you do need to kind of regulate what's going on. So yeah, he was emotionally distraught and had an emotional breakdown this week, which was not real. He did not really have any of that, but because he was watching these YouTube videos, they were telling them that this is what they should have. I'm a Leo. I'm very, are you a Leo too?
I'm a Libra.
You're a Libra? Oh, I love that. Libras are great. You're so chill. I feel like Libras are like, so like you're chill. Like you go with the flow.
I love Leos too. I love Leos.
Sara, what are you?
I'm a Virgo.
You're a Virgo. Yes, you're a Virgo. You are a Virgo. I love that. Virgos are amazing too. I feel like I'm like that kind of, like, I always like led the crowd. Like, I was always a leader. So when my son follows these things, I'm like, no, it like breaks my heart. I'm like, no, but I have to let him do it, because I'm like, I don't have to let him watch everything that I don't want to watch. I regulate that, but I'm like, he has to mull his own path. Like, I'm like, oh, I want you to do that. But I remember when I was younger too, before I found myself, before I found my like Leo energy, I was very, I was a people pleaser. I wanted everybody to like me. Which is, I think, an innate sense of a child. You want to be liked. You want people to like you. You want to do these things. I think it's important to guide your kids. I think it's important to guide them in the right direction, but I also think it's important to let them be them and understand that the world doesn't look like what it looked like when we were kids. So even you guys are younger than me, but it still doesn't look like what it looked like growing up. So you have to kind of, I don't know, be almost like a chameleon and go with the world. Like, you kind of have to change. You know what I mean? Like, you can't stay who you are. Like, I don't want to stay how I grew up, because that's not what the world looks like now. And I'm raising a child in it. So it's important for me to go with those changes and make sure there's respect for everybody. So, I think in school, it would be nice if they did the same, you know? I think some schools do. I think there's some progressive schools that are more in touch with feeling, you know what I mean? Like what a person's feeling and what they're, it does exist. I think like more Montessori, like, there is programs that do, I think, care about what a child's feeling and what they're going through. And there is progression, but most of the time, I think that progression happens in schools that are paid for. You know what I mean? That a parent pays for, rather than, I don't see it happening as much in a public school that you don't pay for.
So I have a question, Jenn and Sara. So we talk about the children and their energy, right? Do you feel like it would be a good thing for teachers and educators to kind of tap into that as well, to figure out what their energy is, and kind of understand, like you talked about chakras, different things like that, because when their energy, right, they're in tune to what they're feeling and what they're going through. To me, that has a greater effect as well on the child, because there are a lot of teachers or educators who they don't know anything about chakras. They don't know anything about the frequencies, vibrations, anything like that. So I guess my question too, I have two questions then. So the first one is, do you feel like educators should, of course, have energy readings and things like that as well? And the second question is, do you feel like children would understand chakras? Is that a good thing to start teaching children at a young age?
I mean, for me, my son knows how to use a pendulum to check his chakras, and he knows how to check his energy to see if it's off. We've always taught him that. He's very familiar. He knows, but I'm very into sound healing. I think that's frequency. So frequency is very important. I've seen it work. Hypnotherapists, I use Glenn Harrold, 2 N's and 2 R's. I highly recommend him. He is a hypnotherapist for over 20 years. He uses solfeggio frequencies, were originally used by the Gregorian monks to chant, and they found healing properties in them, because when you are on a certain frequency, a certain hertz, it can heal you inside your body, like your interior. I've seen it work for me. I have a normal irregular heartbeat, an ectopic heartbeat. I've seen them regulate my heartbeat at times. It comes and goes, but there's times where I listen to the sound and I will not have an irregular heartbeat for months at a time. So I know how well it works. I've seen my anxiety go from this to nothing, from using this. So sound is very important. My son loves frequency healing. I think that is really important. The only people I don't recommend it to is I don't recommend it to pregnant women, just because I've never used it on it. So I don't like to do any kind of frequency for pregnant women, because I don't know the effects on it and I don't want to be the one responsible. I'm sure it's fine. And I know pregnant women that do use it, but it's not by my lead telling them to use it, because I don't know the effects. But as far as a child, my son had a tic many years ago. And we used I'm trying to think what I used. I used 741, which is your throat chakra. So I used 741, and within 3 months, his tic was completely gone.
Wow.
So yeah. So he had a throat sound that he would do. So you're not supposed to. A doctor will tell you to ignore it. The doctor tells you don't do it, don't bring it up, because it does have an emotional impact on it. So don't bring it up. Even though it's a physical thing they're doing, it is emotional. So you're not supposed to tell him. So I didn't want to, he knew he was doing it, because he would say, "Mom, why do I make the sound?" But we found a way to handle it, and it completely took it away. So it was pretty amazing. So that was all through sound healing. So yeah, I think all of that is important. I think teachers should do it. I have a friend that was a social worker, and she was looking to go into the school system. So I made her take Reiki with me. I was like, why don't you take Reiki with me? Because I think it would just be really good to know. Because if you decide to become a guidance counselor or do anything like that, I think it's really good to know. But it was something I kind of talked her into doing with me. I think it's really important. I think it would be a great, you're always upping the education, right? You're in the education system, and they offer you classes, right? When you go to get your master's, you go to get more education. Like, why is there not a class on energy included in this? You know, energy is real. We know that because Reiki healers are actually in surgery now. You know, they go into surgery, so it's recognized now. So why is it not taught that your energetic system? I did Reiki. My aunt passed away about a month ago, and I was in New York for in Jewish you sit Shiva. So we were at my cousin's house, and I said to my cousins, why don't you let me do Reiki on you? Now I am a Reiki master, but I actually feel like I might do it a little more now, because I am, when I started doing it there, I felt very connected to it. So we kind of made it fun, because it was not a fun time. But my cousin was like, well, do you mind doing it on some of my friends too? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, I'll do it. Why not? And everything I was doing, I was like, oh, do you have like leg problems? Do you have, you know, like I was kind of like, I could feel the energy here. And they were all like blown away. They were like, this is crazy. I've never done, because only one of them had ever done it before. So none of them, like out of the 6 girls, one of them had done it. So the other 5 hadn't. And they were like, I can't believe that you can feel the energy. Like you can feel, because you don't touch a person. When you do Reiki, you're not physically touching a person. So, and it really helps. So now my cousin calls me once a week and is like, do you mind doing a Reiki session? I mean, I love that. You know, I love that she wants me to help her. I love her. So if I can help her, I want to do it. So it touches my heart that, you know, someone that wasn't doing something like that is now interested in, you know, getting a little sound. I do it with sound when I do it over Zoom. So I use like a sound bowl and do it. And I love that someone is interested in doing that work that wasn't initially doing it. So I do it for my son. I do it. Wouldn't that be amazing to have a half hour in school, right? Just a half hour, and to have a sound bowl, like have someone come in, do a sound bowl, have, you know, they like how you had initial nap time. Maybe nap time looks different now, and there's some frequency healing on, and, you know, some kind of meditation on. You know, I mean, they've talked about it, using meditation in school, again, like charter schools, Montessori schools that are paid for, you know, or or a different kind of alternative schools sometimes do offer things that are not in your typical school. But it would be nice for public schools to have that, for families that wouldn't necessarily even learn about that, where they're from, where they're living. They wouldn't necessarily have the means to do something like that, right? Reiki is expensive, you know, to get a Reiki session. So if your child's able to get that in school and you're able to bless a kid with that, I feel like it's not a question. It should totally be part of a school day. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. I'm on board, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like in the education system, right, a lot of the staff too, I think it would be beneficial for them, like Candace and Jen were both saying, to tap into any type of energy healing and work too, because that is sort of, the more you know, I think, about yourself, that's what sets you free, right? Like your truth, because we go through life, after, for most of us, I should say, after we pass our formative years, we sort of take in all these inputs from everybody else, and we sort of lose a little bit of who we are, or what we like, what we don't like, that we sort of knew or were in touch with when we were younger. And as we go old, you know, as we become older, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because this person tells us we should do this person tells us we should do that. And I think just for even the staff, outside of the benefits of, you know, for the child, just for their own sake, tapping into their energy, and doing any kind of healing work, I think, is only beneficial. And that'll, you know, trickle down to everybody that they come in contact with. Like Jenn was saying earlier, right? Energy transfers, and it affects everybody you meet, whether it's, you know, through words or just feelings. It trickles to everybody. So definitely, I think everybody should have the opportunity to, you know, be a part of that healing if they can.
I think it would be a good idea. I was saying to us earlier when we were off camera, to have, so Liz, who I do the room with, Candace, and you should join the room with us, she does EFT. I think it would be good to have her on because she could talk about some methods that you could do for kids. You know,
Nice.
like it would be, you know, to show your listeners like some things that they could do, some tapping mechanisms that they could use for their children. You know, EFT is tapping is fantastic, and it's such a simple technique, and you're kind of blown away after, like, really, this just totally totally helped me, and I can't believe how easy it was to do. So I feel like that would be good for your listeners to be able to see that, you know. And your listeners should definitely download Glenn Harold and use that solfeggio frequency. You'll see when you download it which different things are for what. But if you use a 963, that's your crown chakra, which is, you're overthinking. 852 is your third eye, which again, you're like kind of back and forth. Your yes or no feeling, your intuition, honing in on that intuition. Your throat chakra is your communication, everything that you're going through. That's 741. Your heart is 528, which is everything like reparative DNA. It's your self-love, coming into, relationships. You can also use, I'm trying to think of the number, 639 for your heart as well, which is more repairing your actual connections in like marriage and relationships. So that's more for that. For your stomach, also 528 is great because it resonates with yellow, which is your solar plexus, and that's for personal power. So that same sound will work for your solar plexus. Then 417 for your sacral chakra, which is your fear and lack mentality. Like you want to get back into abundance, you want to get out of that fear. That's a great sound for that. And then for your, you got to give me a minute to think about it. I said 852 for third eye and 96. I'm going to get out of the camera for a second. I'm going to tell you what it is. Hold on a second. I think it is 963, but let me look at it for a second. I don't use 396 is your root. 396 is your root chakra. So your 396 is your, like in your root, you hold anger, ego, trauma. You hold trauma in your sacral too, which is right above it. That's the 417. But both of those sounds would be good for that area. 417 is also good. That's your sacral, is good for like parent wounds, like any kind of mother wounds or trauma there. So those sounds are great. I think that's good for your listeners to know because that's something you can use for kids. You can use that for children. It is great if you feel like your kid is not communicating with you. 741, like I said, if they have a tic, it's great. If you feel like they're really anxious, the 528 is going to be amazing. It's going to be really, really good for them. So I really recommend these, Glenn Harold, like I said, it's someone that I trust. I know that he is a legitimate hypnotherapist, well-versed in what he does. So I wouldn't recommend all solfeggios because some of them aren't tuned right to the correct hertz, but his is. So that's why I specifically recommend him.
I second Glenn Harold's frequencies because I've been using them ever since Jenn introduced me to them, and they're absolutely amazing. So I think he has an app, right? Solfeggio.
Yes, he has an app, solfeggio. Yeah, he actually has a few new ones now, but solfeggio is, it's really reparative for the body, right? Sara, you've used it. It's like it's reparative.
I still use it.
Yeah, there's nothing more that I love to do that. And if I'm with clients, usually I put it on, and I usually put solfeggio on in the background because I feel like as we're talking, they're kind of going through that healing. Candace, I recommend it for you and your boys too.
Yes, I'm grateful. I definitely will check it out. Yes.
Jenn, can you just share briefly about, like, if someone, I guess crystals and maybe certain crystals that might be helpful to have maybe around the home to sort of.
Yeah, rose quartz and amethyst are great for sleep. So they're both calming. Rose quartz is also really good for grief, if you're going through a sad or grieving period. But rose quartz brings love, it brings love into your life. So it's great. Amethyst is super calming, and it's really a good connection to your third eye. So those are really good ones. Also, pink tourmaline next to your bed is really good because it has that wards off negativity, but it has the heart, because it's the pink tourmaline, it has that heart-centered focus. So that's something I use. I have a giant piece of pink tourmaline next to my bed. My husband has one on his side of the bed. So that is my recommendation for sleep, for good sleep for your kids. My son is very into blue stones. He's very into, obviously, because of what he's gone through with his throat. He is very into anything that is commutative, like a lapis, a sodalite. He does like angelite too, which is a little more connection to your angels, connection to God, your divine self. He also likes clear stones. I let him pick what he wants when we go. I let him choose, because you intuitively will always choose what you need most. Quartz is great because it's the master healer. So it aligns all your chakras. It also clears energy, any stagnant energy in the body. So clear quartz is a great one. You can get keychains for your kids. You can get keychains with these on it. They can connect it to their backpacks. So, which is great. I think clear quartz is great. Rose quartz is great. If you feel the kid is like sad and lacking that, I think rose quartz is good. If you feel like they just need alignment, kind of steady flow, clear quartz. If you feel like they're all over the place, like very ADHD, ADD, you're going to use more like an obsidian, a tourmaline, an onyx, a hematite. A hematite is great. It's one of my faves, but you cannot have it around anybody that has a pacemaker or defibrillator because it is magnetic. So that's just one you have to be careful with. It is great to have like a hematite bracelet on a kid because it's extremely grounding and very balancing, because it not only wards off negativity, but it turns it into positivity. So hematite is great. It's just as long as they're not around someone that has a mechanism inside of them that is magnetic. There's a rhodochrosite and rhodonite are also great love stones, to bring love. I'm looking at them now. I have necklaces out because I just did a video before this. Selenite, I'm wearing selenite. Selenite is great for, you could put a piece of selenite when you walk in your door. So in the molding above your door, you put a piece of selenite and it clears the energy of the person coming through your door. Wow. So selenite is a great stone to have. And then kind of right by that door, maybe a piece of tourmaline, because it's kind of the polar opposites. It's the white. And it's like your highest energy, your crown, and then it's the root. It's like you're kind of balanced. So those two together are really nice. You'll notice a lot of crystal shops will like kind of do those care packages, and it'll have like a baby selenite and a tourmaline together. So those are like just good go-to stones. There's so many stones. I don't object to dyed stones. I think dyed stones are fine. Like I love pink tiger's eye. Tiger's eye is super protective. Dyed doesn't take away the healing properties from it. It just makes it look pretty, like it just makes it look pretty. It's fine. You could, I happen to like raw stones, but I don't object to having a pretty dyed piece either, if you want it to look good. So there's certain pieces that happen naturally, like rhodochrosite is really pink, but it's naturally like that. But if you see like I said, pink tiger's eye, it will be dyed. But blue tiger's eye is natural. Blue tiger's eye does come naturally. So you see tiger's eye and lapis lazuli are my faves. So tiger's eye to me feels like a protection shield. I feel like I'm like Wonder Woman, old school, like I'm totally protected from the world. It's one of my original stones that I ever had because my uncle was a jeweler. It is extremely protective, really grounding. It is abundant. It brings good luck. So I always think tiger's eye is a great one to have. It's very good for kids because it does have that grounding energy, but it does have that sense of abundance and freedom. Lapis is very connected to your intuition and your psychic abilities and everything that you have to offer and opening up. And it does help you communicate. And it's just a really just regal stone. They used to put it in crowns years ago. It was crowns, lapis, turquoise, tiger's eye. These were all the original stones, in Egypt that they would put into put into the crowns of royals. So I mean, those are some of my faves. You know, I think they're very grounding. I think it's great, but I always think you should let your kid pick out their own stones. So I think that you should bring your child with you because they're going to pick out what they need most. Because you might be connected to something for them and be like, oh, they seem sad lately and they need rose quartz, but yet maybe they just feel like they need to communicate and they're not, and they really need a piece of sodalite. So you should bring them, and there's plenty of stores that have like tumbles, and the tumbles will probably be like $1 to $10. You know, like, I mean, you could have really expensive stuff, and then they'll have like some kind of tumble area that you could, which are very affordable, and you'll be able to let them pick out a few stones. So that's what I do with my son. I let him pick out what he wants, because I think it's important. He knows what he needs, right? The person that knows what we need most is ourselves. So, you know, I think, but I'm very into jewelry. I think jewelry, as far as healing jewelry, it keeps you warm. Like, I'm wearing selenite now. Selenite clears, like I said, clears all energy. So this is something I wear a lot if I do like a broadcast, do something, because you want the energy to be clean, good, flowing with everybody. So selenite is one of my go-to pieces. So I love that. I'm preferable to black and white things. So I like the higher connection of the white healing, and I like the grounding of black. I wear a lot of black clothes as well, because it's very grounding energy. Yellow, like you're wearing yellow right now, that's personal power. That's a very strong personal power, like getting into your power. You know, so I'm not I have to get more into color, but if you see me, I'll always be like, I'm wearing a white shirt now. Like, I'm always in that kind of divine or very grounded energy. If you see me in color, say something to me, because it doesn't happen all the time.
I was going to say you and Sara are 20 with the black and white today. I love it.
Yeah, today, I don't know. I was feeling the black. I actually usually don't. Black is one of those colors that I don't wear too often, but for some reason today I was feeling called to wear black.
Yeah, I always feel like I need to be like stable in who I am. So I feel like black does that for me. You know, it kind of grounds, like I'm like that, I'm like strong in where I'm standing. So I say that, but I love color. Like, I love yellow, I love red, I love all those colors. I just put it on. It's like, I'm like, I don't know. Can I pull this off? Does my energy pull this off?
Pull it off. And I love your glasses, by the way. They're so
thank you. They're key. I love this brand. They're good. They're readers and they're blue light, so they're good.
nice. Well, I'm very grateful for your expertise, for your transparency, for your experience that you shared with your son, the vulnerability of that, because having two boys of my own, you know, and trying to tap into, you know, who they are and letting them know and understand that it is perfectly okay to be imperfect, and it is okay to be who God created you to be. My purpose is not your purpose, and your purpose is not my purpose, right? And truly just tapping into that. And I love when you talked about choice. I think it is important for children and students to truly understand that you do have choice with reason. We do have to be respectful, right? We do have to be loving and kind. However, that you are a human being at the end of the day, and what you say matters, how you feel matters, and not to feel like other people, you know, pushing their beliefs or their, you know, ways onto them, and them understanding that they do, they are able to be their authentic selves, and you know, feel free to express who they are, and with the energy and everything. This was amazing. So I really enjoyed, you know, meeting you and learning from you. This was awesome.
Oh, I had such a good time. Thank you so much for both having me.
Yes, I want to echo what Candace was saying. Thank you, Jenn, for your time and for your amazing energy as always. I'm just going to drop where people can find you, right? You're on Instagram at Multidimensional Jenn, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, and is there anything else you wanted to share
No,
where people can find you?
if anybody wants to connect with me there, feel free. My link is in the bio if anybody is interested in doing sessions. And I just feel privileged for being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.